Governments and world leaders were forced to join the conversation when on Tuesday, October 20th, Nigerian security forces opened fire on unarmed protesters at the Lekki toll gate in the country's commercial capital of Lagos. At least 10 people were killed in that incident, according to Amnesty International. Across the country, violence erupted as hoodlums suspected to have the backing of the Nigerian government wreaked havoc, looting, burning properties, and attacking peaceful protesters. Between October 8, when the NSAS protest began, and the October 20th shooting of protesters in Lagos, at least 56 people have been killed, according to an Amnesty International report. The rights group said 38 Nigerians were killed across Nigeria on that Black Tuesday, October 20 alone. But the Nigerian government has downplayed the numbers, even as the Nigerian army continues to deny firing on protesters. As the nation mourns the deaths of its citizens, many of them young people under the age of 35, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari maintained a deafening silence. Like the infamous Roman Emperor Nero, Buhari fiddled while Nigeria burned. When he finally spoke, what Nigerians and the rest of the world saw was a tone-deaf president, completely lacking in empathy. Not once did he acknowledge or mention what has come to be known as the Lekki toll gate massacre. He then proceeded to suspend the nationwide protests, warning the youths to get off the streets. Failure to do this, he said, quote, will amount to undermining national security, unquote. Buhari chose his words carefully. And to the international community, he said, do not jump into hasty conclusions. With that broadcast, there are those who would say that President Buhari buried the legacy of his administration and wrote the epitaph, Nigerian lives don't matter. To make matters worse, Bola Tinubu, a former governor of Lagos State and a national leader of Nigeria's ruling All Progressive Congress Party, has blamed the victims of the Lekki toll gate massacre for the misfortune that befell them in Lagos. Lagos State Governor Babatunde Sanwo told CNN on Monday that only 2 people died. And we have since learned that it was the Lagos State government under his watch that invited the army to the Lekki toll gate, according to a statement released on Tuesday by the Nigerian army. Last week, amid the backdrop of the NSAS protests, we saw videos of Nigerians breaking into storehouses and helping themselves with food items. According to reports, these were food items that were procured for millions of impoverished Nigerians as palliatives to help cushion the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic. But these food items had been locked up in warehouses where they were rotting away, leaving millions of Nigerians hungry. One thing that is clear from the escalation of tensions that characterized the NSAS protests and the nationwide looting that followed is the issue of poverty, which is at the heart of the frustrations that fuel the NSAS protests. According to the World Poverty Clock, Nigeria currently accounts for 14.7% of the world's population of people living in extreme poverty. Youth unemployment remains a major issue. As of the second quarter of 2020, the unemployment rate in Nigeria stood at 27.1%. What does this mean? About 22 million Nigerians are currently unemployed. What about the number of Nigerians who are underemployed? 22.9 million. And young Nigerians between the age of 15 to 34 account for 34.9% of the 22 million Nigerians who do not have any job. This is according to the Nigeria to the country's National Bureau of Statistics, the NBS. Rising from the ashes of the NSAS protests, some of the big questions remain. Where do we go from here? Will there be another outbreak of nationwide protests? Is Nigeria sitting on a time bomb waiting to explode at the slightest provocation? Who ordered the Lekki Tollgate massacre? Will the victims of police brutality in Nigeria ever get justice? What will become the fate of social media in Nigeria post-NSAS? What does President Buhari's attitude to the groanings of Nigerians say about his character and his government? To discuss these issues with me tonight is human rights activist, pro-democracy campaigner, former presidential candidate, and founder of online news agency Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you for bringing me in. It's been a very long 3 weeks for us here in Nigeria, particularly in Lagos and Abuja, where government has wrought most of the violence that you've described on peaceful protesters. And these protests have started on October the 8th, 2020, and it's reached its peak on October the 20th, 2020, when Nigerian soldiers drafted to the toll gate started shooting at peaceful protesters with live bullets and killing so many of them. As we speak, they have been engaging in cover-ups, as is natural with the Nigerian state. So let's take it from here.
Yeah, before we actually get into the nitty-gritty of the issues that I want us to discuss tonight, I wanted to take us back to 2019 when you were arrested. Precisely on August 3rd, 2019, you were arrested by the Nigerian State Security Service and you were detained for months, then charged with treason, terrorism, and insulting President Muhammadu Buhari. Tell me, and I'm sure millions of Nigerians would like to know, how was your first night in detention?
My first night in detention was in Lagos after I was arrested. They just took me to a virtually windowless room. It had a CCTV camera and they claim that it's to prevent people from committing suicide. So they watch you from outside. Without it, they had no bed. So they provided me with nothing, no food, no water. So I slept on the cold floor for the first night and the second night. And very early in the morning, the following Sunday, they came and said, get ready. And I asked them, where are we going? They said, well, you'll find out when you get out of here. So I followed them and they drove top speeds from the detention center on the outskirts of Lagos, a place called Shangisha, and took me to the airport in Lagos, the presidential wing of the airport. And there was waiting for me a twin-engine small jet belonging to the Nigerian Air Force that then flew me to Abuja. We flew for about an hour, 24 minutes. And when we arrived, another group of DSS people had been waiting, took over, drove me top speed across from the airport to the headquarters, where I was eventually ushered in to see some officials. They couldn't even find themselves. It took me a while. Then they showed up, and then they started profiling me. Asked me to remove my clothes. I told them I can't remove my clothes. I'm not a criminal. So, but they said they want to see body marks if I had any marks. So I said I don't care. So it took about 2 hours just to resolve whether I should remove my clothes or not. So because I had taken my shoes. So eventually took photographs of me and then profiled me, took fingerprints of me, and then ushered me into their own detention center, which was a solitary confinement on the fourth floor. I think it was the fourth floor or the fifth floor. I think it was the fifth floor. It was on top. My detention was on top of, virtually on top of the office of the Director General of DSS, the chief.
Interesting.
So yeah, so that he could monitor. Nobody could see me if it wasn't approved I had two guards assigned to me, one in the morning, one at night, and they frequently come in. They had cameras all over the place. And that was how my detention for 5 months started.
What was going on in your mind at the time you were? It was like an abduction. This didn't even look like an arrest. You were just you were just taking off.
An arrest. It just they came.
Exactly.
I was sleeping. I was in a hotel. I was in a hotel with my cousin, preparing for the protest on the 5th. But I went to sleep early, and apparently they have been trailing me for days, according to them. So they just came into the hotel, held the hotel receptionist to ransom, asked him to take them to my room, and they busted into my room. But I had to make a quick escape before they could get to me, so I could tweet that had been my room had been busted. So I tweeted, and then they came and seized my phones, and they drove me to their office. But I wasn't. It wasn't. It's not new to me. It's not. That was just my first. It's my 10th arrest. Three of them previously by the same characters in the DSS. When I was a student union leader, I was abducted like that in front of a protest and detained in Lagos, the place they call Inter Center, where they detain is embedded into a Ikoyi cemetery. You can't even tell that there's a detention center there.
Wow.
When I was doing NYC, I was equally abducted. I was arrested the day I finished my NYC in Yola, Adamawa State, and detained also by the DSS. They transferred me to a military guard room at the Air Force base in Yola. Kept me there. I almost died because it was hot, and and they had me chained. My hands and legs were chained together. They just threw food through a small opening for a week. That was during my NYC. So then this, but in 1998 as well, when I went to protest at Nuga, I was arrested and interestingly detained at the SARS detention center in Ikeja. So when people started talking about SARS, I was telling them SARS has been around for a long time, doing bad things. When I was detained in SARS, myself and one student union leader, Omile Oluyede was his name of Union Lag, were the only two people in the whole room that had not been shot in the leg or knees or somewhere. So people were there with different degrees of, decay of injuries. And then there were people, they had a torture chamber next door. We were hearing people crying. And then people would pray that they don't come and get them and go kill them in the middle of the night. So SARS is nothing new. It just happened now that people are getting to know SARS. I knew SARS as far back.
Sure, we are going to come very much later to this issue of SARS, but I just want to set some background here. And you have since been released on bail after an intense legal battle with the Nigerian government and, of course, international pressure from the United States. We saw 6 U.S. legislators, including New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who wrote to the Nigerian government demanding that you should be released from detention. But the reality is that you are almost like a man under house arrest. You are still confined to the Federal Capital Territory. You are not allowed to leave Abuja. How do you feel about this?
Well, I didn't feel like I'm free, so I'm still on that. In fact, last week, in the thick of the whole NSAS protest, they went to court. They suddenly revived my case. They hadn't done my case since February or thereabout. Suddenly, they called my lawyers that criminal trials will be held for 2 days, and the day before was when they killed people at Lekki. And when I couldn't sleep, when you see the blood and you're getting all this information and curating them, I couldn't sleep. And I woke up, I couldn't go to court. So I got to court a little late. Turns out that they are planning to revoke my bail so that they can rearrest me and put me back in jail. But somehow the lawyer was able to fight that. That's someone representing Femi Falana in court. Fought, against him. But my lawyer used the killings at Lekki to describe it. He said, this is a government that just killed young people at Lekki. He's trying to rearrest Shore. And that probably prevailed on the judge a bit. The judge insisted I must show up. I eventually showed up in court for about 5 minutes. And they adjourned the case till December 10th and 11th. Because when I was in court, they didn't bring any of their witnesses. They have no case. As you can imagine, they've dropped the charges accusing me of insulting Buhari. They dropped the charges accusing me of money laundering because they claim that I launder my own money.
Right.
So they're left with the ridiculous charge that, I engage in treasonable felony, that by way of organizing a protest, somehow in their mind, I was trying to overthrow the government.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are. But they don't even have any witnesses to prove that. So they keep playing the game. Their agenda is to keep me in Abuja with the hope of pinning me down here.
It seems we lost connection. We'll be all right. Yeah. We're back. Yeah,
we're back. So, I won't be able to do advocacy. I won't be able to do my journalism since I was partially released. By the way, on December 24th, 2019, these same characters have sued me for. I think I have about 8 lawsuits for libel. Yes, different kinds of government agencies trying to sue me, ministers, politicians, they're suing me for what Sahara Reporters is writing. The Minister of Justice sued me through a third party. The Minister of Communication threatened to sue me. The Lagos Speaker threatened to sue me. I don't know if they sued me. The Governor of...
we were writing about their corruption. and
yes, just for exposing corruption. The Governor of, I think, Plateau State, was that Benue State, one of those governors sued me. There's one chief imam, sued me. There's one pastor in Lagos tried to sue me. So there's just like bringing all kinds of things just to see if they can muzzle me, they can stop me from doing what I'm doing, and motivating and mobilizing people to the barricades to resist, this criminal system of governance that's
speaking of mobilization, let's talk about the recent developments we saw in Nigeria over the last few weeks. You have been at the forefront of mobilizing Nigerians to rise against tyranny, oppression, and rising inequalities that we've seen in Nigeria, especially under the Muhammadu Buhari regime over the past 5 years. With what we have just experienced during the NSAS protests, is this the revolution that you have been talking about?
I wouldn't say yet, because the revolution is supposed to have an end game. And the end game of the revolution is to change the old order and replace it with something brand new. We're not there yet, but at least we are one leg away from the revolution, because we started from protests on October 8th, and now we've reached an uprising. Nobody can deny that this is an uprising. People have risen up in different corners of the country against the state, and it took different dimensions. It took people taking on the economic system. It took people going into, warehouses to take what belongs to them. Palliatives, as you have heard, palliative hunters everywhere. They took on the state, they took on the military, they took on the police, but the revolution will happen when all of this combined together catches enough attention to change the status quo ante. So we've not had a revolution.
We've not had that yet. And yes,
I would be the first to admit that this is revolutionary. I'll be the first to. This is. I mean, I've done this for 30 years. I've never seen this level of activity at once, covering this many cities and towns, and engaging young people in a way that we've seen in Nigeria in the last 3 weeks.
Revolutionary as these protests have been, as you described them, what do you consider the most significant outcome of the NSAS protests? Do you think this protest achieved anything concrete beyond the disbandment of SARS by the Nigerian government? Or have these protests failed to achieve the set of objectives?
I think it achieved the purpose for which it was initially designed. And in my lifetime, there's never been a protest that achieved immediate results like this before. If it was before, the government would just say, look, you can go do your worst. We are not going to disband. In fact, President Buhari said it when he first started. I thought it was a joke. And he called the police IGP and said, the police is the most patriotic unit of the Nigerian security system. I praise you. We are behind you. Because at that point, he thought it was a joke. And then next, they are disbanding SARS and then they're replacing it with SWAT. And people are saying no. So it achieved its immediate objective.
Beyond the brute force that the government used to disband protesters,
participants realized very quickly. I think we're back.
I thought you had concluded your point, but yeah, go on, please. Yeah.
Right. But what the protesters realized quickly was like, oh my goodness, Nigeria is more rotten than just ending SARS. We have to end a number of things. So it became end these, end that, end Buhari. At the point it became end Nigeria because everybody was just trying to end something. And that's the point I'm making, that ending SARS wasn't going to solve Nigeria's problem. The problem of inequality, lack of democracy, lack of transparency, lack of respect for human rights, lack of respect for dignity of Nigerian person. And SARS is just one of the problems. In fact, SARS is just like a drop in the bucket of the problems that's afflicting Nigeria. The biggest problem, of course, is in Aso Rock. Buhari is Nigeria's biggest problem. The Buhari regime right now. Every other regime that's been around since 1996. So people clearly saw that, wow, Nigeria's problem is bigger than this, especially.
I think I lost you there at some point, sure, but I think you want to conclude your point because we need to move on to the next other issues.
Oh, go ahead and ask your next question.
So my next question is, we saw some cracks within the rank and file of the prominent faces that were behind the protests. Looking back now, do you think that the protests would have probably been more successful had there been a clear leader or a group of leaders leading that protest or those protests?
It would have, but here is the thing about the NSAS protest. It started as a sporadic set of actions. In Abuja, on October 8th, it was myself, Deji, Adeyanju, Aisha, Rafa Adebayo that led people to, protesters to the police headquarters. And they thought it was a joke, and then Fars and Runtown led protesters in Lagos. And when they saw the number of people attending to these protests, they were shocked, but they thought it was a joke. And then the next day, it just kept expanding and exploding. It didn't have time to have any kind of cohesive leadership because it was very spontaneous. It happened so fast. And there are several other issues that came up, celebrities joined, and then the international community joined. When I say international community, yes, people outside of Nigeria who are our friends, and then there was the diaspora. So, but I'll say this, the fact that they didn't have a clear leader at the beginning was the reason why it was successful. Yes, if they had a group of leaders, they would have isolated the more radical leaders from the leaders that, in their view, are reasonable, and hold meetings with them and put an end to the NSAS protest, because they were convincingly trying to tell people that we've answered you. We've responded to everything you want. We've ended SARS. We started. They answered to it. They got the BP to say, look, yeah, everything you want in your 5 demands, man. They were doing PowerPoint presentations to the public. But the fact that there was no clear leader made it possible for the protest to just keep going in a way that it was uncontrollable. You remember that they were also selecting some celebrities at the beginning, to talk to. The police department had an Instagram live with Naira Marley, at the point, the central bank governor, the NNPC folks, and the business community started holding, underground meetings with some people. They were looking for places and persons that could be weak links so as to break the ranks of the protesters. But because there was no leadership, it was very difficult to do that. And but at the point, we must understand that protests that have had this massive level of success must have a political objective, or an economic objective, or a cultural objective, or a social objective.
Yeah.
And that's where leadership would have been very, very important, to have a group of leaders that are very clear about what they want to achieve out of this. But the leadership that they were looking for, or that emerged, was leadership that they were looking for to dialogue with. But we had not reached the point of dialogue. We needed to keep pushing until we were able to achieve those massive political objectives. I would have expected by now, if the movement had pushed it a little far, the removal of the IG of police, the removal of even the military chiefs who were involved in the killings in Lekki.
Yeah.
Well, because, again, that's the downside to...
I was going to come to that very quickly, and I think we should take a look at this video. Former governor of Lagos State, Bola Tinubu, who was essentially blaming the victims of the massacre in Lagos. Let's take a look at this video very quickly.
Those who suffer casualty during the gunshot needs to answer some questions too. How are they there? How long were they there? What kind of characters are they? Even though we want to help, we see must extract information that will help the government to prepare in future or understand how and when to react. Because
So that was a national leader of Nigeria's ruling All Progressive Congress Party, Bola Tinubu, former governor of Lagos, essentially blaming the victims. What do you say about that?
Look, Tinubu had earlier tweeted in the day on his Twitter account that government will be justified to use force on the protesters. And the Lagos State governor had also tweeted before an attack on the protesters at the toll gate that they were miscreants, that these protests have been hijacked by miscreants. So this was their mindset. Their mindset was to look for a way to, first of all, criminalize the protests and then justify the use of force. And it was so because they have been using force, informal repression, through their talks, because don't forget that they had hired talks to attack people at the Lagos State Assembly ground where they have been camping out and injured people severally. And they did that also in Abuja. And also, in fact, in Abuja, they killed one of the protesters. And they kept just moving people around. Even the DSS, through one of their contractors, Amakre, was lying that it was a senator that was moving the talks, because the DSS vehicles were caught moving talks in Abuja. All these things are available in the public domain. So this is what Tinubu is telling you is the mindset of the government. Like, you have to go and bring back the dead to come and explain why they went out to protest. Or if you are injured.
And also, the governor, yes, his statement, the governor also said that only 2 people were killed. And before he said that, he had initially denied that there were any casualties. Let's take a look at that again.
Yes.
Fellow Lagosians, whilst we pray for the swift recovery of the injured, we are comforted that we have not recorded any fatality as against the widespread circulation on social media.
So, and then a couple of days later, while speaking to CNN, this is what he said.
2 dead bodies. That's what we've seen from all the morgues. That's what we've seen going to hospitals. That's what we've seen, as records. What has happened is there's been so many footages that we're seeing that people have shown, but we've not seen bodies. We've not seen relatives. We've not seen anybody truly coming up to say, indeed, XYZ, I'm a father, I'm a mother to someone, and I cannot find that person. Nobody has turned up, right? I've been to the ground. There's no scratch of blood anywhere there.
Who ordered people to be shot?
Interesting. What do you say about this?
these guys are a bunch of criminals. This is typical criminal politics. Where you blame the victims for attacks carried out by them. They knew what they did, and it wasn't even until we started. Sahara reporters and others started reporting exactly where the soldiers came from, what time they came out, and what they did, that they now started confessing that anybody even died at all. They claim that 2 people died, but it's a video online 3 days ago of the guy who was wearing Ankara, who was sitting at the front of. He died, and the doctors treated him. Because he was shot, and the bullet punctured his lung. You can see a huge lump on his back while they were treating him. He said he's dead. They have not acknowledged his death. They have not acknowledged the fact that the military took somebody back to the hospital, their own hospital inside Bonny Camp, after the attack. Today, when the panel tried to visit a morgue belonging to the military, they delayed them for 45 minutes. Eventually, they showed them some places they claimed were under renovation. But there's a report also showing how they took some bodies to Yaba, about 20 bodies, secretly transferred to Yaba. So there is massive cover-up, and the Lagos state government is at the center. Don't forget that the Lagos state governor also claimed that he didn't know how the soldiers came about.
Exactly.
Until the President Army, the garrison, the 81D, came out and said, "You are the one who invited us." And he hasn't denied that. So it's been, they're using one lie to bury another lie. It's been lies upon lies. These guys are a bunch of liars.
And that takes me to our next question, which is essentially the body language of the president and what it tells us about whether there's going to be really any justice. People have lost their lives, real human beings. Will there be accountability?
No, there won't be. Look, see, what people are not paying attention to, maybe it's because we have short memory in this country, is that you look at the history of the regime. What has it done since it came? Its major achievements are in extrajudicial killings. You expect a Buhari that killed 375 or 365 Shiites in one night to acknowledge the death of maybe 12 people at Lekki. He doesn't care about you. He's done it to Shiites. He's done it to the IPOP guys. He killed them at will. We look the other way because we say, we're not Shiites. We're not IPOP, and then now they've come to us. So that's the way the Buhari regime operates. It's a killer machine. It's a regime that believes in killing people as a way of shutting them up or shutting them down. They were shocked that there was pushback this time around. Because look at the Shiites. Each time the Shiites come out to protest, what do they do in Abuja? They shoot at them, they kill them, they kill more of them. Each time they protest, they kill more of them. Each time the IPOP members, the indigenous people of Biafra, protests, they kill them, right? Isn't that what they do? Right. So why are you surprised? Why would Buhari just change overnight? Except if you believe in the theory that this is not the Buhari that used to be there. Otherwise, this is Buhari for you. Buhari chose the fun.
The Nigerian government, for the first time, saw the real power of social media this time. The whole world was essentially talking about this.
I think it's not the power of social media that scared them. I don't think it's the power of social media that scared them as much as the power of people being on the streets. They've never seen
exactly. And this week, just on Tuesday, Nigeria's Information Minister Lai Mohammed, while defending his budget before a parliamentary committee, basically brought back the issue of social media again. And this is what he said. Let's take a look.
The world today revolves around two things: smartphone and data. Smartphone, and the young ones we are talking to don't even watch television, don't listen to radio, they don't read newspapers. And you'll be shocked that if you start arguing with your own daughter or your own son, she will be quoting as a Bible the social media. So, Mr. Chairman, sir, the long and short, sir, is that I've said it that we need a policy on national policy on social media. We need also to empower the various ministers, the Ministry of Information, on how to deal with social media. And we need the technology to be able to shut down at will social media, which becomes a menace to the country's security.
Lai Mohammed, Nigeria's information minister, wants a policy, wants government agencies, ministries to be empowered to be able to shut down the social media at will. That's what he said. How ridiculous is this?
It's ridiculous. It's look, a lot of these guys are living in the past, right? It's because of their. It's not only because of their age; it's because of the age of their ideas, right? They live in la la land. How do you shut down something that you cannot even produce, right? They don't understand the way the world is working, and that is part of what was shocking to them when they saw that Nigerians were organizing these protests on social media, because these protests were largely organized out of the traditional means of organizing protests. There was no town hall meeting, there was nobody hitting the gong, inviting people to protest. It was quietly done on WhatsApp messages, Telegram groups, Facebook pages, Twitter, and other social media tools that are even beyond their own understanding and recognition. So in that confusion, the only thing they could ask for is to shut down social media. They have forgotten that there's more to social media than just a tower, or what is even within their own control. They don't understand that even China, with all its resources, its power, did not succeed in really shutting down social media till tomorrow.
And he mentioned China as an example. This is what he said about China precisely. Lai Mohammed, he said, quote, "When we went to China, we could not get Google, Facebook, and Instagram. You could not even use your email in China because they made sure it is censored and well regulated," unquote. That was what he said also at that. Why is China the example even for Nigeria?
It's because Nigeria always takes the worst things from any country. When they wanted to go and get a social media law, they went to Singapore and plagiarized their social media law and brought it word for word. I don't even think I think they forgot to even remove Singapore from the text in some of the places. They're so dumb. You can't blame them. But the same people cannot go and bring a prototype of the Singaporean airport and come and put it here, or the Singaporean highway, or pay people the minimum wage that they pay in Singapore. That's always the case. They all look, when George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter was a big deal, Nigerian government officials were celebrating the fact that the police could kill people at will in the US as the way of justifying the activities of SARS. It's like, they kill in the US too, so what's the big deal? So, but can they allow Nigerians to justify looting also? Because they also loot in the US during protests.
Right.
They also loot in the UK during protests. Can we also justify exactly since they do it in the UK? Can we also do it here? These guys are a dumb set of people. I don't want to talk about them. That's why I say that this program was expanded to put an end to this misery that we call government in Nigeria. That's the only way out.
I find it interesting. You mentioned the issue of age, and if age is probably the problem with people like Lai Mohammed, what about Desmond Elliott, who just 2 days ago was also calling for social media? Let's take a look at this video.
Mr. Speaker, we need to address certain things. The Nigerian youth, the social media, the social influencers, all of these are making the narrative that we are seeing today, except we are joking with ourselves. Social media, yes, though good, has its negative impact. Let me first thank you for condemning the wanton killings and carnage that happened at Lekki. When I went through the comments, I could not believe it, Mr. Speaker. The curses, the abuses from children. And I ask myself, is this Nigeria?
The abuses from children. Desmond Elliott, Nollywood actor who is now a member of the Lagos State House of Assembly, is the one who just spoke in the video you just watched. And he's I think 46 years old, and he speaks in such a condescending manner about Nigerians on social media, young people tweeting and talking about what they feel about what is going on in the country. And he's relatively a younger person. How do we reconcile all of this?
No, I think probably if you listen to what I said at the beginning, I said there's a problem of age and there's a problem of age of ideas. So you can be young and have old ideas. And I think Desmond Elliott falls into that category. You know, they don't understand the way the world works. The fact that somebody is a Nollywood actor or actress doesn't mean that they know what is going on out there. You know, he has archaic ideas, even though he's of a younger age. So that's the point to make about all of this. I think it's to discuss realistically where is it coming from and whose script is Desmond Elliott reading on the floor of the house. It's apparently reading the script of a godfather. Because these are the people that put them. They didn't win elections. They had their own way of being imposed upon the system, and they are exuding the same kind of exuberance and arrogance of their godfathers, Bola Tinubu and the rest of them that put them in office. So,
before I let you,
so dynamics.
Before I let you go tonight, let's talk a little about solutions. Where do we go from here? There's so much happening. We are not even sure that anyone is going to be held accountable for what we saw, the October 20th massacre in Lagos. We saw the killing of the Shiites. Up till this moment, nothing has happened. So where do we really go from here? What's the solution to this?
It's up to us to determine where we go from here. The only way to hold these people accountable right now is to return to the streets. We must continue to own the street. The moment you no longer own the street, you have lost your voice completely. I don't want to criticize anybody, but I've seen the way some of our organizers and participants and activists in the NSAS movement embrace government panels, like the state's inquiries into. It's not going to get you anywhere, because as we saw in Lagos today, even that simple access that was required to get into a morgue took 45 minutes, and it almost degenerated into another shootout between the army and the panel members. And even if you write a beautiful report out of Lagos, it can only be advisory to the federal government. You can't get the army to implement the advice. In fact, the army may refuse to come to the panel of inquiry. And even if they come, they might come and BS through it. So if you, for example, you tell Buhari that we have figured out who gave the command to kill people and we want the person to be tried for murder or mass murder, whatever the case may be, are you expecting Buhari to go arrest Buratai, who is the chief of army staff, or to identify the soldiers who carried this out? Even in Kaduna, where the Shiites were killed, they set up an inquiry, and the inquiry mentioned specifically the military officers who were involved, those who were killed. Nothing has happened since then. So why are we embracing, something that would not take us anywhere? So it's for people to understand that without owning the streets, you cannot own the narrative, and without owning the narrative, you cannot command the solutions that are needed. The solution that are needed is to have complete control over our fate and destiny in this country. Right now, it's in the hands of a few criminals who occupy political power, and they're using it as a lie. Don't forget. I just want to add this. Yesterday, we went to visit the FCID cell here in Abuja to see someone. When we got there, we discovered that there are protesters that are still in detention. They moved one guy from Ekiti to Abuja. They're not on trial. There was a guy who gave a comment about Buhari. He was arrested since April 2nd. The guy is languishing in jail. He's a pharmacist. He just made a comment on Facebook, that they said was a threat to Buhari. Meanwhile, the people who are Buhari supporters, who are threatening Aisha Yesufu, nobody's arresting them. You understand what I mean? So you see the contradictions, and they do everything they can. And I know there's never short supply of bad people and people who defend bad people. they'll go on, they troll people on Facebook to justify the criminality that's going on. There are some of them are still asking to today for us to present who was killed in Lekki, even after they admitted that people died, and their parents have not come to claim them. We didn't see blood, come and show us. It's not a massacre. It's just a few killings. We use blank bullets. We didn't shoot at them, But where did the bullets come from that injured over 37 people? And one guy's leg was amputated yesterday.
Wow.
Because as a result of gun injury. So, but you still have the people who have the temerity and the audacity online, trolls, the people that you and I know who come and defend this criminal conduct of government.
Right.
So until we own the streets and we continue to own the street, we don't stand a chance. We'll just go back to where we are and they'll kill another set of Nigerians and then we'll be complaining again.
Thank you so much.
But if we make that effort to hold on to the streets and at least make sure that even when we are not there, they know that we can be back on the street at the slightest provocation and on the shortest notice, we will get the respect we need to change our country. Thank you for bringing me.
Thank you so much, Omoyele Sowore, who has been my guest tonight on the show. I guess that's a fine place to leave it. If you do not control the streets, you do not control the narrative. That is your conclusion on the issue we discussed tonight. We've been discussing NSAS, Nigeria, and the future. And you are watching The Fix. I am Ogimai Amaiza. This is the show where we get to discuss the issues as they are without the fear of NBC shutting us down. You saw what they did to us. Kakaki Social, my show on AIT, they shut us down. But this is the show on social media where we come to you live, bringing you the issues the way they are without the fear of the Nigerian government coming to block us or shut us down. And thank you all so much who have tuned in tonight to watch. Join us same time next week, 7 p.m. GMT +1, 2 p.m. ET in New York. And we're going to have a great time. Thank you so much again, once again, Sowore, for joining me.
Revolution now.
And good night to you all.